Hi everyone, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to start this next Go show by reading some of the background. You could let me know in the comments if you find this useful or not. I don't usually read it because I think the Go shows provide enough information along with my banter to explicate the teachings, but sometimes I think the teachings, the letters, are so personal and include so much local historical storytelling, lore, fables, that kind of thing that might be unusual to our Western thinking, that it's helpful to read the background so we get a sense of the context. Usually what I do is just add my own context before I begin a Go show, and that's, I think, sufficient. But in this case, I think it's interesting because the person this letter is believed to have been written to is, I don't know, not really related, but there's a close connection between Nichiren and his inner circle of disciples, Nikko, Nikkyo, Nichimo, and so on, and the recipient of this letter. And I think that gives it an interesting twist because when dealing with his inner circle, he assumes a lot of Buddhist scholarship, but assumed knowledge, in other words. But when he speaks to lay believers or lay monks, like you and I, he will make reference to doctrinal information, but often temper that with things more common in general, in cultural stories and so forth, that might make the doctrine more accessible. And he does that in this letter. So I thought that I might read not all of the background, but certainly part of it so you get the gist. It says that Nichiren Shonin wrote this letter in the first year of Kenji in 1275 at Minobu to the lay monk Takahashi Rokuru Hyoe, who lived in Kajima in Fuji district of Suruga province. Takahashi's wife was the Aunt of Nikko. And it was through this connection that he had been converted to Nichiren's teachings. He appears to have been a leading figure among the lay believers in the Fuji area. Another letter thought to have been written to Takahashi, many in body, one in mind, mentions that he had served the Lotus Sutra with devotion for many years. Nevertheless, Nichiren had for a time avoided communication with Takahashi and other followers in the same area, the Fuji district, for fear of placing them in jeopardy. It is possible that he wrote this letter in response to news of Takahashi's illness, which he refers to in the concluding paragraphs. So, I thought that was an interesting tidbit to kind of place his audience in this letter, being a relation to his inner circle, and yet a lay monk, a nudo, a monk amongst the people, rather than a secluded scholar, right? So, reply to lay monk Takahashi. Our compassionate father Shakyamuni Buddha, the world-honored one of great enlightenment, made his appearance in central India at a time when the human lifespan measured 100 years. And there are footnotes for these kind of things, so I'll let you do your research on that. And set forth a lifetime of sacred teachings for the sake of all living beings. The people living at the same time as Shakyamuni Buddha had already formed profound karmic ties with him in the past. Hence, they were able to attain the way. So this is simply stating the capacity of the people constantly comes up in the doctrine, and the implication here, explication actually, that people during Shakyamuni's day, when he was alive and teaching his enlightenment, there were a percentage of people who could understand what Shakyamuni had attained and had the capacity to gain their Buddhahood through his teachings directly. Not all people, but certainly a percentage of the people of his day. And that starts us on the path of former day, middle day, latter day, the capacity of the people, right? However, was so concerned about how to save those who would live after his passing that he put his 80,000 sacred teachings into written form. Not that he did directly, his disciples did that, right? Then, among his lifetime of sacred teachings, he entrusted the Hinayana Sutras to the Venerable Mahakashyapa, and both the Mahayana Sutras and the Lotus and Nirvana Sutras to Bodhisattva Manjushri. Now, this is, again, from the documentation of the sermons. But the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo, the heart of the 80,000 sacred teachings and the core of the Lotus Sutra, he neither entrusted to Mahakashyapa or Ananda, nor transferred to the great bodhisattvas such as Manjushri, Universal Worthy, Perceiver of the World's Sounds, Maitreya, Earth Repository, or Nagarjuna. Even though these great bodhisattvas hoped that he would do so and requested it of him, the Buddha would not consent. He summoned forth a venerable old man called Bodhisattva's Superior Practices from the depths of the earth, and then, in the presence of the Buddha money treasures and the Buddhas of the 10 directions, from within the tower, adorned with the 7 kinds of treasures, the thus come one Shakyamuni entrusted the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo to him. Now, if you're not following this, this bodhisattva was the leader, one of the leaders, the 4 leaders of the bodhisattvas of the earth. This is all from the sermon of the Lotus Sutra. The reason, so he's explaining the Lotus Sutra, as I was saying earlier, in a more common way, a less scholarly way. Although he's using the scholarship, he's introducing the method and the bequeath of Myoho Renge Kyo to an audience of the latter day of the law from the bodhisattvas of the earth, we, who come later after his passing. Doctrinally, if you're studying and following all of the sutras, and specifically the teaching of the Lotus Sutra, this becomes clear. But taking for granted that this lay monk has a life to live, he's working, he's part of regular society and has a wife and all of these things, he has many distractions. So he's presenting that same scholarship in a more storytelling, expedient means sort of way. So that's what I wanted you to catch from the start. The tenor of this letter, this Gosho, again, has a different flavor than many others. Let's go on. The reason for this was as follows. All the beings who would live after the Buddha's passing would be the children of the Buddha, and he left compassion for all of them equally. But just as it is customary for a physician to prescribe medicine according to the particular ailment he is treating, so for the first 500 years after his passing, the Buddha decreed that Mahakashyapa, Ananda, and others would give all beings the medicine of the Hinayana Sutras. For the following 500-year period, he decreed that the Bodhisattvas Manjushri, Maitreya, Nagarjuna, and Vasubandhu should bestow upon all living beings the medicine of the Mahayana Sutras, such as the flower garland, Mahavajracana, and wisdom sutras, and for the period of middle day of the law. 1,000 years after his passing, he decreed that Bodhisattva's medicine king, Bodhisattva perceiver of the world's sounds, and others should bestow upon all living beings the medicine of the remaining teachings, with the exception of the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra. Once the latter day of the law has begun, however, with regard to the Hinayana Sutras, the Mahayana Sutras, and the Lotus Sutra that were entrusted to Mahakashyapa, Ananda, and others, to the Bodhisattvas Manjushri, Maitreya, and others, and to the Medicine King Perceiver of the World's Sounds, and others, though the words of these sutras will remain, they will no longer serve as medicine for the illness of living beings. That is to say, the illnesses will be grave and the medicine weak. At that time, Bodhisattva's superior practices will make his appearance in the world and bestow the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo upon all the living beings of Jambudvipa. So all of this, again, is to say the story in a different way. He's not directly talking about the teaching of the time and the capacity, but he is teaching that same scholarship of the time and the capacity of the people. He's using the analogy of illness and medicine. So it's kind of a flip on the capacity, basically saying that delusion and adhesion to desires and attachments and so forth will be much stronger as time passes and the population changes, cultures change, and certainly today it would be easy to make an argument with all of the distractions that we have in our lives today demanding our attention, that we have far greater opportunity for distraction and attachment than a farmer of 3,000 years ago. Pretty easy to make that argument. So here it is in Buddha's scholarship, saying that with that much distraction, we need a medicine or a tool, a method to awaken our enlightened nature, our Buddha-ness, that is far more direct and tangible and immediate than, again, a farmer of 3,000 years ago could focus their mind on attaining their enlightenment with far less distraction, calling them away from that. So, interesting. He continues, then the people will all look upon this bodhisattva as an enemy, because all of the distractions are so overwhelming that when they get offered this tool, this medicine, they'll just say, wow, why would I bother with something so difficult? Right? Or, as you would say, medicine, foul tasting and so forth, because it's so contradictory to the sweet pleasures of the distractions, right? They will be like so many monkeys faced with a dog, or like demons eyeing human beings with spite. They will treat him as if he were Bodhisattva's never disparaging of the past, who was not only cursed and hated by all people, but was attacked with staves, rocks, and tiles, or as if the monk's realization of virtue, who was nearly put to death. At that time, Mahakashyapa and Ananda, Mahakashyapa, not enunciating well today, and Ananda will hide on Eagle Peak, or disappear into the Ganges River, and Maitreya and Manjushri will withdraw to the inner court of the Tushita heaven, or retire to Mount Fragrant. Bodhisattva's perceiver of the world's sound will return to the western region, and Bodhisattva universal worthy to the eastern region. Although there will be persons who practice the various sutras, since no one will be there to guard or protect them, they will be unable to benefit themselves or others. Although there will be persons who chant the names of the various Buddhas, the heavenly deities will be unable to protect them. Instead, they will be as helpless as calves separated from their mothers, or pheasants sighted by hawks. At that time, the great demons from the worlds of the 10 directions will come crowding into the continent of Sampuddvipa and will take possession of the four categories of Buddhists, causing them to inflict injury on their parents or to do away with their brothers and sisters. In particular, these demons will enter into the hearts of those monks and nuns throughout the nation who appear to be wise or seem to be diligent in observing precepts, and through them will practice deception upon the ruler of the nation and his ministers. So now the conversation or the letter is shifting toward, now you have a basis of understanding the scholarship through this story. Now I will now teach you the doctrine of today's Buddhism, in my time Nichiren, and I will demonstrate how these teachings are no longer useful. They're old. You need to be practicing Myoho Renge Kyo, the Lotus Sutra, and I will show you how damaging it is to life in general. This is why he's saying they couldn't help themselves, benefit themselves or others with these early teachings, because they just fall short of the capacity, the need, the time of the people of today. And he's going to demonstrate now with current history and recent history what that false idea of those earlier teachings, not false, but inappropriate and unable to manifest Buddhahood in the capacity or the time of these highly distracted people. Those teachings no longer are effective. And the result of trying to force a round peg into a square hole is as follows. These things happen in our societies, things don't work, and I forgot to plug my computer in, and hopefully I won't lose you. Okay. I think we're okay. All right. So, to continue. At that time, when under the protection of Bodhisattva superior practices, a person bestows just the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra, the 5 characters of Namu or Myoho Renge Kyo, upon all the people, those 4 categories of Buddhists and other prominent monks will hate him, as if he were their parents' enemies, a foe from a previous existence, or sworn enemy of the imperial house, or a person bent on revenge. So, practicing these earlier teachings, which are now ineffective and inappropriate, those people will stand back on their heels and say, whoa, wait a minute, this was good enough for my great-grandparents. You know, who do you think you are? So the arrogance will set in, right? And it will add more resistance to the good medicine or the appropriate teachings of the time. The discord, this discord begins, right? At that time, great changes will be taking place in the heavens. Eclipses of the sun and moon will occur. Great comets will streak across the sky, and the earth will quiver and shake as if it were a water wheel. After this will come the disasters of domestic rebellion, in which the ruler of the nation, his brothers, and other great men of the nation will be attacked and killed. Next will come the disasters of invasion from abroad, in which the land will be attacked by neighboring nations, the people will be taken prisoner or commit suicide, and all the people throughout the country will, whether high or low, will suffer great tribulation. So again, this is a summation of the kinds of world events or life experience conditions will be alarming, because the teachings will be inappropriate or counterproductive. And so this is all, again, an expedient means of delivering the scholarship of the history of the teachings, right? So all of this will come about solely because the person who is propagating the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra under the protection of Bodhisattva's superior practices is abused, struck, exiled, and threatened with execution. We read in the, so now he's going to make the connection obvious. We read in the sutra that Brahma, Shakra, and the deities of the sun and moon, and the 4 heavenly kings inscribed an oath in the presence of the Buddha at the assembly where the Lotus Sutra was being preached, vowing that if anyone should show enmity toward the votary of the Lotus Sutra, they would chastise that person even greater vehemence, with a even greater vehemence than if they were the sworn enemy of their own father and mother. So he's talking about any votary of the Lotus Sutra, because this is documented in the sutras, but he's also referring to his own position in Japan in that day, and as he's identified himself several times, as you know, as the votary of the Lotus Sutra. He's not alone in that, but he's certainly the one who's taken on the mantle of the bodhisattva, or the leader of the bodhisattvas of the earth, us, and the one pushing back against these erroneous or no longer effective teachings, the ineffective medicine, if you will. Now when I, so here he goes, makes the full shift. Now when I, Nichiren, have been born in this country of Japan, hold up the bright mirror of both the Lotus Sutra and all the other sutras to the faces of all the persons in Japan, I see that matters differ not in the slightest from what the sutras predict. Just as the Buddha foretold, great changes are taking place in the heavens and disasters are occurring on the earth. For some time now, I have known that this nation is destined for destruction. I knew that if I reported this to the ruler, and if it were still possible that the nation might be preserved in peace and safety, then he could surely ask me to clarify the meaning of my words. But if the nation were indeed doomed, then the ruler would refuse to heed my advice. And if he refused to heed my advice, I knew that I would most likely be condemned to exile or execution, just as is documented in the sutras. Yet the Buddha has warned us, quote, if while understanding this matter you still hesitate to risk your life and therefore do not declare it to the people, then you are not only my enemy, but the deadly enemy of all living beings, and are bound to fall into the great citadel of the Avicii hell. These are the Buddha's words. This is Shakyamuni's words. So that's an admonition to those who know better, who know truth, who know with clarity the right medicine, and who refuse to stand up for it. This is worse than not practicing or not doing it correctly or not taking the medicine, because now it's not only yourself that you're condemning to a life of ineffectualness, but you are poisoning the well. You are not only preventing others from knowing the good medicine or the truth or the correct way, the effective practice, but by doing that, you're committing a huge crime, because you're now preventing them from knowing what you know. By not acting, by not saying so, you are making a negative, very negative cause, not only for your own life, but multiplied through the lives of all of those in your environs, right? Those you might come into contact with. So at this point, he goes on, I became troubled as to how to proceed, because obviously he knows, and how does he then tell everyone? He's going to try to tell the ruler, and if the ruler accepts and asks him for information, hooray, I can persevere, and through the ruler, I can affect the people. But if he doesn't, and in fact, as is told in the sutras, sees me as an enemy and becomes someone to thwart my efforts, now I've kind of burned my bridge, and it's going to be really hard for me to affect the people of Japan or the people in my environment. How am I to teach them? Because now, not only is he going to become an obstacle for his own ruling administration, but he will also become an obstacle for me to reach anyone else. It's quite a gamble, but he starts with the ruler, which is his most effective way of affecting the nation. And so he goes on to say, if I spoke out with regard to this matter, there was no telling what might become of me. My own safety was of little concern, but suppose that my parents, siblings, and perhaps even one other person out of my 1,000 or 10,000 should follow me, they too would surely be hated by both the ruler and the common people. And if they were so hated, then not having a full understanding of the Buddhist teachings, they would find it difficult to endure the attacks of others. So this multiplies out quite quickly. And this is a statement that I often try to point out in other letters, because Nichiren may appear as, with casual readings, as a very arrogant monk, but if you read, especially like I'm going to point out in this letter, his concern is never for himself. He's full of humility. He's constantly pointing out that he's just an ordinary guy. But the teachings and what he knows from these teachings is far too radically important and critical for the lives of everyone that he can't remain silent. So he has to adopt this courageous spirit, which can appear like arrogance, but in truth, he has to stand up. It's his life's mission. Having had this clarity, he must let others know and encourage them to know. To know, not only to know, but to know at the level that he knows, so that they too can stand up. And together they can create this well of knowing and method and medicine that it will affect others. This is this is what's under the idea of propagation, rather than, I know in the West when we think propagation, we think collect members, build the organization, and then it becomes a question, it's very capitalistic, of an organization being important. And we slide into that mentality very easily, and that this is why organizations are in fact antithetical to Buddhism, because it's not the organization that needs to be propped up and held together. It is a different word, sangha. It's not an organization that needs to be there. It's a collection of individuals that needs to be there. The sangha is you and I, individuals with our own lives, who share in the knowledge of this perfect tool to awaken our personal Buddhahoods, not the organization's Buddhahood. You see the difference? This is slippery in the West because we're so inculcated in our culture to think of building this other, this pyramid, this organization. And this is not Buddhism. But the verbiage in these translations can lead you to think that way. And so I caution you, that is not the goal of of propagation, if you will. It is about making indomitable individuals, not a great organization, not a great other thing. It's a collection of powerful individuals, independent individuals. That's what a sangha is. Very, very different kind of a thinking, right? So let me end this paragraph and then we'll take a break. Where are we time-wise? Not too bad. Okay. So they too would surely be hated, blah, blah, blah. They would find it difficult to endure the attacks of others, though they had supposed that by practicing the Buddhist teachings, they would gain peace and security. See, once again, the peace and security is individual. It's not collective. It eventually becomes collective. This is our goal of Kozen Rufu. But that is in opposition to forces that would be impeding us. So peace and security in mind, again, Buddhism is a life condition of the mind, while in samsara, with others who act as deterrents, obstacles, so on and so forth. In fact, they would find that because they had embraced his teachings, they were beset by great hardships. In that case, they would then slander his teachings as a distorted one and therefore fall into the evil paths. How pitiful that would be. So, I mean, this is the situation today. It was the same in Nichiren's time. It was the same before. It's just that the numbers are getting much greater. And with the numbers become, or obviate, more dramatic differences, right? But on the other hand, he goes on, if I failed to speak out on this matter, then I would not only be going against the vow I made to the Buddha by practicing and studying Buddhism, but I would become the deadly enemy of all living beings and be condemned without fail to the great Afishi hell, which I explained earlier. He understands that he must speak out, knowing ahead of time that he's going to be faced with tremendous opposition. He still must speak out. Very much, and I've said this before, it's a simple story, but it's the story of the emperor's new clothes, right? In the West, we all know this story at one, to some degree, about the emperor who hires a tailor to make these excellent new gowns, and the tailor being, for whatever reason, feeling so overwhelmed by the pressure of this king to ask of him, the emperor actually, to ask of him to make these unreasonably incredible gowns, that he mysticizes it and shows to the emperor these fine fabrics and threads and everything that are so amazing that only the imbued, such as an emperor or king, could even see them. And not to be embarrassed, I mean, the tailor really worked on the arrogance of the emperor. The emperor thought, well, I can't see anything, but if I say that, then I won't be one of the special imbued people, so I'll go along and go, oh yes, those are amazing. And this tailor makes a whole outfit of clothing out of thin air and dresses the emperor in them, and the emperor standing there in the room completely naked. But because he can't let it be known that he's not imbued and special and can't see these clothing, he arrogantly wears these clothing, and because his court and everyone around him is feigning, oh yes, emperor, oh it's so amazing, oh you look so, and they don't dare say what they actually see, because then they might be subject to death for their heinous, peasantry, that they don't belong in the circle of the very imbued emperor. It's a very story of very inculcated arrogance and a refusal to see what is obvious, right? And the emperor goes with this court out into the public to parade his new clothes. And his court around him is like, God, I hope nobody says anything, But there's a little kid in the audience who goes, and everybody is awed. The naked emperor is walking through town, so all of the peasantry, feared for their own lives, right, is looking at, the emperor's new clothes, and everybody knows he's naked, but they don't dare say anything, except this little boy who says, or could be a girl, right? But this young mind that isn't inculcated into all of this arrogance and stupidity around, fake or ineffective, what shall we say, illusory thinking, magical thinking, just shouts out in the middle of the crowd. But he says the obvious, the emperor's naked. And just hearing it out loud was enough to break the ice. And the emperor thought, oh crap. The truth is, I've been fooled by my own arrogance. I'm naked, and he's totally embarrassed. It doesn't happen that quickly in the story, but essentially that's the story, right? So, by not speaking the truth, everybody else is complicit in the crime of this stupidity and arrogance. So, Nichiren, feeling much like the child in the emperor's audience says, I can't not point out that he's naked. I have to say something. And this alleviates the stress on everyone else in varying degrees and so forth. And you can go on with the analogy from there. But that's basically what he's saying to everyone. If you know the truth, then you must speak out, right? And it's been said in many other ways throughout literature, West and East. But this is the conundrum he finds himself in with Myoho Rengekyo. Thus, though I had pondered which course of action to take, I made up my mind to speak out. I felt that once I had begun to speak out, it would not do to falter or desist along the way. In other words, I have to stay the course. And so I spoke out with ever-increasing vigor. Then, just as the Buddha's words in the sutra predict, the ruler grew hostile, and the common people began to attack me. And because they treated me with enmity, heaven grew enraged. The sun and moon displayed great changes in their behavior, and the huge comets appeared. The earth shook as though it would turn over. Internecine strife broke out, and they were attacked by a foreign country. All happened just as the Buddha had predicted, and there is no doubt that I, Nichiren, am the votary of the Lotus Sutra. So he's begging this lay monk, who's related to him familially, just through, well, not to Nichiren directly, but to his one of his important 5 or 6 disciples, to please understand that this is my position in the country right now. I'm not walking around like I'm imbued with specialness. It is my responsibility to point this out. So I carry this burden with honor. So he's really imploring on this lay monk to understand that this isn't all just rhetoric. I didn't make this up. This is from the teachings, and the events of recent Japan and my own life indicate that I'm pointing out the truth. So it's not just me, it's what I represent, it's what I'm saying that's important. Please understand that. So once again, Nichiren is going out of his way to not be deified, right? This isn't me inventing this. This is me calling it out, right? So, last year, when I left Kamakura and took refuge here in Minobu, I had intended to stop and speak with you and the others, since it was on my way, but in the end I did not do so. In addition, I also failed to reply earlier, though I certainly had no particular intention of neglect. How could I ever feel distantly toward any of you? Even in the case of the Nembutsu monks, the Zen monks, and the true word teachers, and the rule of the nation, and other men of authority, all of whom bear me such hatred, I admonish them because I want to help them, and their hatred for me makes me pity them all the more. How could I, then, think lightly of those who, even for a day, have acted as allies and extended their sympathy to me? So it's an apology because circumstances didn't allow him to come and personally meet him. So now we get a sense for this letter of how he's expressing a lot of the things that he wished he could have told this Takahashi in person. He just wasn't able to. Actually, I'm relieved when those who have wives and children to worry about keep their distance from me out of the fear of the world's reaction. So he's saying, on the other hand, not having gone to your home, I may have made it less obvious that you were practicing Myoho Rengekyo and a follower of what I'm putting out as the new medicine, the true medicine for today, because that has brought all of this ire and danger around me, and perhaps not having had the opportunity to come visit you in person was actually a protection for your family and those you love, right? So, I have no power to save those who ally themselves with me, and in addition, they may risk having what small estates they possess taken away from them. It pains me to think how this must distress their wives and their children and their followers who have no real understanding of the situation. So now he's speaking to him as a leader in his area, as somebody who's a teaching monk and helping others to practice Myoho Renge-kyo. But, a lot of those people are new to the teachings. They're not scholars, and they might not understand that after chanting Namo Myoho Renge-kyo for a few weeks, the authorities come and take all their possessions. That could easily turn them against this teaching, right? In the 2nd month of the last year, I was granted a pardon, and on the 13th day of the 3rd month, I left the province of Sado. Arriving at Kamakura on the 26th day of the same month, when I met with He-no-Saimon on the 8th day of the 4th month, he questioned me about various matters and, in the course of the discussion, asked when the Mongols would launch their invasion. They will come this year, I replied, and with regard to that, there is no one who can save Japan but Nichiren. If you want to save the nation, you should cut off the heads of the Nembutsu, Zen, and Precepts monks in Japan and expose them to view on Yui Beach. But I suppose it is too late for that now. Everyone thinks that I'm simply intent upon speaking ill of the Nembutsu teachers and the Zen and Precepts monks, but these people are of little consequence. It is the true word school, with its evil, unlife-affirming, negative doctrines, that is putting a terrible curse upon this fair country of Japan. The great teacher Kobo and the great teacher Chikaku were misled by these teachers and have brought this country to the brink of ruin. Though a country may be destined to be destroyed in 2 or 3 years anyway, if the ruler has the true word monks offer up meditations for its safety, it will be attacked before a year or even half a year is out. These are the things I told him. Being so fiercely hated merely for trying to give advice that would save the country, I suppose that when I was pardoned from exile, I should have left Sado and hidden myself somewhere far off amidst the mountains or by the seashore, but instead I went right to the seat of government, Kamakura, because I hoped to explain the situation one last time to He-no-Saimon, the ruler, and thereby save those people who might manage to survive an attack on Japan. After offering my admonition, I knew I should remain no longer in Kamakura, and so I set off, letting my feet carry me where they would. And since you were on the way, I thought how much I would like to see all of you and once more, even though it might be an imposition. But though the thought came to me 1,000 times, I struggled with my own feelings, and in the end, I passed you by. Not because I didn't want to see you, but because I knew I'd really stuck my foot in the nest, in the hornet's nest, right? The reason is this. The province of Suruga is the domain of the Lord Sagami, and the Fuji area in particular is full of those related to the widows of high-ranking officials. These people, remember, Japan was constantly at war. These people feel great rancor toward me because they look upon me as an enemy of the late lay monks of the Shamyoji and Gokurakuji. I was afraid that if they heard that I was visiting you, it would bring grief to you all. Until now, I have feared causing trouble for you, and so I did not even reply to you. I have repeatedly warned the monks to avoid, under any circumstances, going anywhere near the area of Kajima and Fuji, and yet still I am apprehensive about what may happen. As to this matter, where are we time-wise? Yeah. All right, so he's going to now launch into his reasoning for why there's so much trouble and continue this letter explaining the situation in Japan at the time. And I think it's really interesting in terms of our practice. And the reason I say that is because, once again, I have to caution. There are some groups that just rally together with the mob mentality to go out and shakabuku randomly all over the place. And though I don't want to admonish anyone for attempting to point out people's misinterpretations of life, misbeliefs, and convert them to Myoho Renge-kyo, I think that's a very honorable thing, and that's what we all need to do. That's part of our practice. That's part of our teachings, right? This is what Nichiren is our guide. But remember that Nichiren is our guide and constantly reminding us of the kinds of retribution that we might face in that regard. So what I want to teach, what I want to show, is that you'll have to be personally responsible when you do this. You can't just casually shakabuku people. You can't plant the seeds in people without the correct level or to well up the compassion that says that you're going to see it through. Because when you show somebody, whatever it is, Buddhism or not, a truth, a clarity of understanding, you must be ready for an onslaught of questions. Because you've just opened a door or a window for this person. This person is going to look through that door and window. And so it's not merely telling them that there's a door or window that's important. That once that's perceived, you have to be ready to help them on their way through the door, looking out the window. What does that look? What should I be seeing? How should I do this? Oh, thank you so much for telling me there's a way to achieve my own enlightenment. So now, how do I do it? How do I go forward? What do I need to know? How do I learn more? How do I support my own practice now that you've shown me how to do this? Right? I mean, find analogies for yourself, whether it's a sport or a martial art or dance or painting or a musical instrument. You know, show a musical instrument to someone who's never learned anything about music and show them how you can pluck a guitar or blow through a trumpet or any instrument, a xylophone, a drum, and show them how you make music with it. You can't possibly expect them to just go, that's great, that's nice, bye. If they get interested, if they say, wow, I would like to play that instrument, then you can't just walk away. I mean, I suppose you could, but you're really sullying your own effort, aren't you? If you want to show somebody how to play an instrument, simply to show it to them and play it for yourself isn't satisfactory. You need to give them some assistance. And as great a goal as enlightenment is, shouldn't that have the same level, if not more, responsibility attached to it? And since we're talking about Buddhism here, if somebody comes to you and says, I've learned about this thing called a saxophone that you play well, or that you even just play, I'd like to learn more about it. Whoa, what a gift that is to drop on your lap, because it says you're ready. You're ready to expand your own experience of bodhisattva. Challenge yourself to become a teacher, a supporter to somebody who is asking of you to do so. They've taken 90% of the battle away from you. You don't have to confront anyone. They're coming to you. Take it on, and take it on with the responsibility of seeing it through. This is what it means to propagate Buddhism. Not pamphlets, not advertising, right? Be very cautious of those who take Buddhism and treat it with such disrespect as to hand it out and go on television and with commercials and everything. And you know, I know we walk a fine line now with YouTube, but it's not, you know, I don't have Tide laundry detergent supporting my my channel. I do this for our Sangha. It's intimate. It's something you have to locate, right? And we share these teachings rather intimately, which I am, again, so incredibly thankful for. Because you want to know more. And my commitment is to give you as much as I'm capable of giving you. Thank you for allowing me into your home, your environment, your time. But it's all on you. You must do the practice. You must come back to the next video. You must comment on the video so that I can interact. You must email me if you have a question in your own life that you'd like to hear my thoughts on. Right? I'm not going to come knocking at your door. I don't know where you are. If you were a neighbor, I would do that, but that would be more difficult, wouldn't it? So this is what I mean about Shakabuku versus Shoju. When someone comes to you, it shows you. When you go out and try to change the mind of others, or in your daily life, encounter people who seem to be coming to you with resistance and things they don't even understand why, you may have to very carefully instruct them as to what you're doing so that they can then raise curiosity in themselves. That's Shakabuku. And that's more difficult because you have to be cautious. You can't just run around breaking glass. You need to show people the window, not bust it out so they can figure out that there's a window there. That's a very dangerous proposition. If you feel that that's your mission, then please understand that there's repercussions. I don't want to stop you from doing it, as long as you understand what you're facing when you do it. And this is what Nichiren is talking about. He knew. And it just gave him more conviction on what he had to do. But he went the long road, didn't he? He stuck with it because he knew the nature of what he was doing. That's not for everyone. So be careful, prepare yourself, understand that this is an incredibly powerful teaching. And the payoff is commensurate, right? Your very enlightenment, your liberation from suffering, living a life that huge, experiential, beautiful, can have its costs, right? Don't let that deter you, but just understand what it means. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. So do you see why I appreciate you so much? Thank you. And I'll see you in the next one.